Here is we're being recorded now, I suppose. What you were telling me before, when we were talking outside, you were telling me 2 or 3 different stories now. Just briefly, we'll talk more about them at another time. I just want to get them here for the record. Okay, we talked about 3 things. We talked about Anastasia and Alexis.
Yes.
And we talked about Lucky Lindy's son.
Yes.
And we talked about that you were roommates with Robert E. Lee's grandson.
Oh yeah, Robert E. Lee IV.
Okay, to me, I mean, that's 3 things we started talking about, and already I'm just like blown away, you know. So you probably have like another couple of dozen stories like that.
I've met an awful lot of people in my life.
You met an awful lot of people.
Well, I've been out front. I've been for audiences for the past 50 years.
You've been in front of how many?
Audiences for the last 50 years.
Audiences, all right.
And they usually range from 100 to 700 people. And I told them what I had to say, and the people liked it.
Okay, well, let's start with an easier one. Okay, you were roommates with Robert E. Lee's great grandson with Robert E. Lee IV. Is that correct?
Yes. See, I enrolled at Chapel Hill University. I admired the writer Thomas Wolfe, and he went to Chapel Hill. So I drove down there, talked to the people about becoming a student. And I drove back to Virginia, and when my phone rang when I came in, and it was the dean of Washington Lee University, Dean Gillum. I'd never met the man or talked to him. And he said, Eustace, we want you here at Washington Lee. And I was very flattered by that. I thought I had no academic credits that they'd be attracted to, but he just told me outright. He said, we want you here. I said, well, I'll certainly think about it. And I went down the next day and enrolled as a student. And I only studied there 3 years because I was planning to be a writer and an artist, and Washington Lee had no art department. So I transferred to art school in Washington, D.C. because they had a lively art department, and I went up there and enrolled there.
Wow. I went to school to be an artist myself.
Yeah,
I ended up being a contractor instead, but do a few cartoons once in a while.
Okay.
Okay, so you knew Robert E. Lee's grandson. Now, the other 2 stories are even more profound.
All right.
Okay, Anastasia. Now, most people, including myself, were under the impression that all the Tsar and Tsar Nicholas, that is, and his wife, Alexandra, I believe, was her name, right? And his 4 or 5 daughters and his son were all murdered by the Bolsheviks, right?
The 4 daughters were beautiful ladies.
Oh, yeah.
And they were brought up as the daughters of the richest man in the world.
The Tsar was the richest man in the world at the time.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
By far, he had enormous gold collections and enormous minerals and resources all over Russia.
And you were telling me earlier that when the Jews or the Bolsheviks, killed him, that the whole economic scene of the world changed on account of that they took all his money, which was enormous, and just the gold that he had. The gold that was added to, let's say, the world supply, if you will, just changed the whole balance of how much gold was out there, right?
Well, it changed the face of Europe because Europe depended on Russia's Ukraine to furnish all the grain supplies of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And when they murdered the Tsar, they murdered the peasants too.
Mm-hmm.
And so there'd be no more grain. So it threw Europe into chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Just the geographical fact of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole world was on the brink of succumbing to communist tyranny because their food supply was gone. And so it had enormous complications with everyone. And then Jacob Schiff wanted to commit ritual murder against the entire Romanov family because this was a religious operation.
A ritual murder, right.
A ritual murder. And that's why they murdered the entire family.
And what was the reason that they, well, whenever they killed somebody, as you pointed out, it is a ritual murder because they always killed by vengeance.
Well, this is an act of vengeance because Jacob Schiff claimed that the Tsar had been unfair to the Jewish people.
Right.
What he did, he set up areas of Russia in which he said the Jews could not come. Beyond
beyond the pale, right.
Beyond the pale, because there was so much unrest against the Russian peasants because they were being robbed of all their grain by the Jews. And to keep peace in Russia, he felt like they had to restrain the Jews. So the Jews vowed to murder him for that. And they did. Murdered his whole family.
Except his two children, right?
Well, two children escaped with the help of loyal Russian people. They thought they'd gone down the basement and shot all like that, but two of them just had superficial wounds. And the reason for that was that when they were arrested by the communists, they managed to load their dresses with very valuable silver pieces, solid silver. And they actually had 170 pounds of silver in their clothing. And this stopped most of the bullet. That's why they weren't killed immediately.
Wow.
See, that fact is not generally known.
Well, the other fact that's not generally known is, I mean, everybody's under the impression that the whole family was killed. The history books tell us, of course. Right. Now, there have been some claims throughout history, I've seen on the History Channel or one of these learning channels, that, there has been this one lady that claimed that she was Anastasia, but, was she or not? They leave you believing that it was probably a hoax, and the answer is never given clearly. Whether she lived or not, but they put it out there as that there's been a rumor. You seem to know otherwise firsthand, right?
Well, I know the lady, Anastasia.
You met Anastasia.
I met her a number of times, and she had a lot of friends in Charlottesville, Virginia.
So she lived in Charlottesville, Virginia. Anastasia did.
She married a professor at the University of Virginia, Mr. Monahan.
Mr. Monahan? And you said he was a CIA agent?
Yes.
So the Rothschilds had her marry him so that they can keep control over her. Is
That's
that correct?
right. This way they could keep track of her movement, and she had no reason to be concerned about this because they were just watching her. They weren't doing anything to her. So she had nothing to complain with.
But was she able to ever go out publicly and?
She always went out in public.
But I mean, to actually say I was Anastasia, I was the Tsar's the daughter.
She had a lot of friends, and
so everybody knew who she was. It wasn't like a secret, right?
they knew her, and they celebrated the fact that she was there.
Wow.
They had a house on University Circle, outside the University of Virginia, and they had quite a bit of trouble with the students because they had heavy drinking parties all the time. And Anastasia complained about the noise they were making, the disturbance. So she had a real complaint against the University of Virginia. And she did complain about it. So the carousing slackened off a little bit, but she made her effect felt, and they tried to make the students behave a little better.
So you met her on several occasions.
Oh yes, I met her at parties where she was a guest, and Charlottesville is a very social town.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Horses. They're all horses and they
Right.
race and everything.
That's in Charlottesville, Virginia,
Yes.
here. So how many years did she live in Charlottesville?
She lived in Charlottesville till she died about 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago she died.
Yeah.
And she came here when? I think you said in the early 20s at some
In
point?
the early 20s, she showed up in this area because she had been held in an insane asylum for a while.
Uh-huh.
It's an old ploy to get rid of people and that who talk too much about their origin.
I see. So did anybody ever go like on TV or something or read the articles in the Charlottesville
No, I
newspapers or anything?
I
No,
don't
right?
think she ever wrote to the papers. I never saw her on TV,
Mhm.
but she was a very celebrated person in
Wow.
Charlottesville.
Wow.
So I don't know whether you...
So a lot of people at Charlottesville knew that she was alive and existed,
Oh,
but
they did know
somehow they never really got the airtime and the news to basically say it to the whole world, did they?
Well, the communist line was that she was a hoax.
Right.
And this was the accepted propaganda line
Wow.
in Virginia,
Wow.
that she was a hoax.
Wow.
But there was no proof that she was a hoax. And nobody could say one way or the other.
But you said that they asked her questions. They brought people that knew
Oh,
her or
oh.
knew everything about the
Well, the Tsar's household,
Tsar's household.
she was in the Tsar's household as a daughter, and she knew all the Tsar's people.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was questioned by a number of members of the household,
Mm-hmm.
and they questioned her, and their conclusion was she was absolutely true.
So people that also lived at the Tsar's household and they knew questions, they could ask the questions that only she could have known
That's right.
to answer, and she actually did answer and passed all the tests, all the questions that they put to her.
Yeah, and these members of the household confirmed her identity.
Mm-hmm.
And still, the rumors persisted that she was a hoax.
Wow.
That came from the communists. They wanted to discredit her,
Right.
and they didn't want anybody to believe her
Mm-hmm.
because she could make a claim to the throne.
Uh-huh.
And that was the whole idea.
I see. And asked for all that gold and all the money back that
Oh,
they
yeah.
stole from her, right?
Well,
Now you also mentioned Alexis, that the brother, the hemophiliac brother, the only son, the only son.
he was a very fine man.
Yes, yes, and that you met him also, and that he also was alive until recently.
Well, I wrote for his newspaper. He published a newspaper out of New York City, and I wrote articles for that.
What was the name of the newspaper?
I was trying to think, it wasn't the Power and the Glory. It was something like that.
Something sort of sounding like
I don't
Papaheraklis.
write any copies anymore. I had copies.
And it was published in New York.
New York City.
What time frame? What the year?
Yeah, a monthly paper.
But I mean, like, what was it in the 50s or the 60s, 70s? Asked for all that gold and all the money back that
Oh,
they
yeah.
stole from her, right?
Well,
Now you also mentioned Alexis, that the brother, the hemophiliac brother, the only son, the only son.
he was a very fine man.
Yes, yes, and that you met him also, and that he also was alive until recently.
Well, I wrote for his newspaper. He published a newspaper out of New York City, and I wrote articles for that.
What was the name of the newspaper?
I was trying to think, it wasn't the Power and the Glory. It was something like that.
Something sort of sounding like
I don't
Papaheraklis.
write any copies anymore. I had copies.
And it was published in New York.
New York City.
What time frame? What the year?
Yeah, a monthly paper.
But I mean, like, what was it in the 50s or the 60s, 70s?
It's been in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
How long did he publish it?
He regularly published it until he died in the late 70s,
Late 70s he died,
about 74.
about 74. And Anastasia died about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That would make it about 99, more or less, or late
Uh,
90s.
As far as I know, there wasn't anything suspicious about their deaths. I mean, no one murdered them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they lived under the fear of constant that the KGB would track them down and kill them.
Wow. So he published the newspaper. Alexis published the newspaper until he died. You said
Oh yes.
in the late in the '74.
I'm sure you can find copies of it in there.
So for like 20 years he was publishing these newspapers.
Oh yes.
And did he himself say that yes, I am Alexis? Did he publicly write in his newspaper?
Well, he wrote under the name of Anastasia.
Oh, so he had a pseudonym.
Well, he used that studio assumed name because he was actively helping the Soviet Union. He was actually helping the American government identify communist espionage spies in the United States. And he uncovered Walter Kissinger himself.
He uncovered Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger.
And he said that Henry Kissinger was a spy and that his real name was not Henry Kissinger.
No, his communist name was Boer, B-O-E-R.
B-O-E-R.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so he identified Kissinger to the American authorities, which was a very courageous thing for him to do.
It's a wonder they didn't off him for, especially considering how powerful Kissinger is, right?
Well, he was one of the most powerful men in the world, and he had his clients were the most important people in American industry.
Of course.
He had a long list of clients.
Of course.
And made millions of dollars.
With these Kissinger associates, after being Secretary of State, of course, he later founded the Kissinger Associates, which is still in existence, right?
Yeah.
Making millions and millions of dollars, of course.
And when Bush attacked Iraq, he put the treasurer of Kissinger Associates in charge of all Iraq. He became the Gauleiter of the whole Iraq Republic.
Was that the Chalabi? Was that the guy? No.
No, I can't remember his name offhand. But you've seen him many times in the press.
Okay.
It was a very corrupt administration because they were letting no-bid contracts. No, they did let a contract with no bids. You just name a figure.
Sure, of course.
Accept it.
Of course. Like a Halliburton and all these other companies.
They were part of Halliburton, all this.
Yeah, Brown and Root.
Cheney was.
Cheney, of course.
Was the president of Halliburton at the time.
Exactly.
And that's why he did
no bid contracts, and that's when they were charging us 5 times more for gasoline than they were buying it for, and so many other corrupt things that they get caught at.
When this man from Kissinger Associates was running Iraq, billions of dollars disappeared in thin air.
I remember there was a story, AFP had it, $12 billion in cash had disappeared.
Oh, yes.
In cash. A whole Dakota cargo plane full of cash, pallets of dollar bills, $100
That's
bills.
why the country was run.
$12 billion in cash was just sat there, and it just vanished in the black hole of the pockets of Halliburton.
Yeah. Well, under Bush, Iraq was in complete chaos. And they blamed it on the fact that Kissinger had put his man in there. Because that's all he did was lead the country. But nothing was ever done about it.
Wow, that's just amazing. That's just unbelievable thing. So you met both of these people on several occasions. That is the Anastasia and Alexis on several occasions.
I corresponded with them.
You what?
Corresponded with them.
You corresponded with them?
And Alexis, I corresponded with the telephone.
And Alexis, was there also some kind of a procedure to validate whether he was in fact legitimate in the same way that they did with Anastasia?
I don't think he went through any tests
Mm-hmm.
because nobody ever questioned his legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was ever asked to prove that his identity is genuine.
What made you convinced that in fact he was Alexis?
Well, because he was publishing a political paper,
Mm-hmm.
an anti-communist paper,
Mm-hmm.
and other things like that, convinced me of his sincerity.
Mm-hmm. Now you also mentioned that you just debunked another great myth, which was Lucky Lindy,